Eugenius is a musical that I have heard a lot about over the past couple of years. It had quite a tragic tale when it comes to its production history. It originally started at the Other Palace and started to gain a lot of popularity and traction, and then it announced a West End transfer. However, sadly, this West End transfer never saw the light of day. And now we are here, and the show has downsized itself into the much smaller Turbine Theatre. They've reassembled the team and they are here to put back on Eugenius. And now I've been able to see it, and sadly, it's not a show I enjoyed. So, why didn't I like Eugenius? What potential did it have? What did I enjoy, and what does the show need to improve? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie. I talk about theatre. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do video essays, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribing. It really helps me out, it helps out the channel. I've also opened channel membership, so if you want to go above and beyond to support the channel, you can join by hitting the join button down below and unlock some exclusive videos along the way. But let's just get straight into Eugenius. Eugenius is about a boy called Eugene, a self-described geek in the 80s. He is making his own comic book about a superhero from his own dreams, Tough Man, who fights his long-lost brother, the evil Lord Hector. He only has two friends, Jurney, who is completely and utterly in love with him, and Ferris, who is there too. When a Hollywood talent scout visits Eugene's school, Eugene is whisked away to Hollywood to turn Tough Man into a full motion picture film. But when it turns out that Eugene's comic characters are real, the real Lord Hector shows up and accidentally finds himself in the middle of this filming set. Will Tough Man come to save the day, or will it be on Eugene to stop the evil Lord Hector? I think right now, if you were going to ask me what I would give this specific version of the show, it's a high 2-star production. There's a lot of potential with this show, but the plot kind of focuses on the least interesting story beats and ideas within this plot. The best part of this musical, when it really comes to life and works incredibly well, is with the entire mistaken identity section with the evil Lord Hector. It's so camp because he accidentally finds himself playing himself in the movie despite him not knowing that it's a movie. And the rest of the crew just think he's a really annoying method actor. This is just straight up hilarious. The confusion that arises and the silliness is almost comparable to, like, farce, but mixed in and blended together with the 80s and superheroes. And you can tell how much fun this is for the actors. Joseph Beach devours the scenery as the evil Lord Hector. He runs through the audience with a mini-mist. He hands up every single line, and it's almost impossible not to enjoy his moments in the show. It's so perfectly camp. So, when it's clear that this area of the show is what works the best, why does this only amount to about 20 minutes of the show as a whole? We only really find out that Eugene's story is real at the end of Act 1. And even then, they do it in such a weird, vague way that, honestly, I wasn't even certain that that's what they were going with until Act 2 started. The rest of the show follows Eugene, Jurney, and Ferris. 3 geeky teenagers that I really struggled to connect with on any level. Now, let's be perfectly honest. If there were any characters who I should connect to in a piece of media, it should be the kind of geeky ones who are obsessed with a certain, very niche piece of media. But I mean, I wouldn't know anything about that. Eugene is a fine protagonist, I guess. He's not unlikable, but he's a bit bland. There's not enough character within him, and there's not enough drama or conflict for me to really latch onto. At the end of the day, he's just a geek archetype, but that's not a nail in the coffin. I mean, I really love the Bake Off musical, and every single character in that show is based off an archetype. However, what they do is that they give them all the stories, they give them the heartfelt beats within their character, and they give every character a very strong moment to show off who they are beyond their archetype. The Despite the whole plot being about Eugene and his journey to becoming great and like his superhero idol, he doesn't really do much. And he disappears for like half of Act 2. And all of the drama that he gets himself into is very uninspired. His relationship with his father, his falling out with his friends, these are plot beats that we see everywhere, and I've seen done 1,000,000 times better than this show does it. Nothing the plot throws his way feels like it actually really tests his character, or tells you who he is. Janie's entire character is that she's in love with Eugene. There's not really anything else to her. I will say I find her more interesting as a lead than Eugene, because at least she's confident, at least she does stuff, at least she's there, you know? As I said, I do enjoy her confidence, and I do enjoy how she is trying to keep the friendship group together, and I guess that does lead to some drama and some testing, and some nice songs like Don't Shoot for the Stars, Shoot Higher, but again, I struggle to relate to her. But the worst character out of this trio is 100% Ferris. Ferris is kind of the comic relief, and I will say there were people in the audience who very much enjoyed this comic relief. At the end of the day, their character is two things. They make references to random films, and they make jokes about how horny they are. That's it. That is their entire presence in the show. And look, I like a little bit of innuendo. I like a little bit of, towing the line a bit. But I feel like with this type of comedy, there's a limit. And for me, personally, Ferris hit it in the first scene he was in. He just comes off as creepy. Like, honestly, borderline predatory. And the references can be fun. But when that's all this character is doing, it just becomes grating. I think this would be less of a problem if Ferris had any bearing on the plot as a whole, but if I took out Ferris from this musical, nothing would change. Absolutely nothing would change. Nothing plot-wise, he does literally nothing throughout the entire show. So if he's not funny, and he doesn't do anything to service the plot, why is he here? I have not seen a show in a long time that I've really not liked any of the main characters. And that really goes against this show. And my question becomes, why do we need Eugene, Ferris, and Janie? When you've already got an element to the plot that is strong enough to hold a musical on its own. A 90-minute musical just focused on the Lord Hector side of the plot sounds amazing. I would pay good money to see that, because that's what works about this musical. That's what's so fun. That's what I found myself really enjoying, and what I found myself wishing it was more of. Make them the main character and just follow their journey as they try and work their way around this weird world that they found themselves in. Maybe slowly give them a redemption arc. Maybe they really end up enjoying acting. They find their muse. They find their purpose in life. No longer are they chasing after this person that they've been trying to kill all these years. Now they just want to be an actor. And that would ground them and maybe even give a reason for why they do evil deeds, because they were neglected, because they had a bad childhood. Even if they wanted to focus more on Eugene and Janie, it could probably still even be a one-act show. If you cut down a lot of the fluff, which, let's be honest with ourselves, pretty much most of Act 1, you'd have a much better paced version of this musical. But right now, the show itself, the actual plot, is the weakest element of the entire thing. Which I think is even more of a shame when we come to talk about the music of the show. There are some really great moments in this score. It is a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think when it hits, it really does hit. Now, Eugenius knows its best number because it repeats it like 3 times in the show, which I always say if you're just going to repeat your best material, you're going to end up weakening your best material. But this number is the different variations of Go Eugenius, Go Eugenius, and Don't Shoot for the Stars, Shoot Higher, which are all basically the same song. I feel like you could cut one of those reprises. I'd probably say the one in Act 1, and the show would be better for it. And so would the song's impact. Because this is a great song. It's a perfect bop. It's like fun, and it encapsulates a lot of the vibe that I think the show is trying to go for. The song Evil that Lord Hector does is so camp. Is it the greatest song in the world? No. But honestly, as you guys have seen in this review, I just love anything that Lord Hector did. So, you know, there you go. And I think it gives Hector a great moment to take the spotlight. Climate Kind of Love is a nice power ballad. It's a pretty sweet duet, and yeah, I enjoy it. And another song that really works is A Little Kiss Ass. I think in this space it's weakened a little bit by its staging because everything kind of felt cramped in with the show in the Turbine, but I'll speak about that a little bit more later. With that being said, I think there are some weaker elements to this score. Geek is a bit simple and repetitive. It's a nice-ish introduction to Eugene. I just think it goes on for a bit too long. Ferris's song, he does a kind of rap that really perfectly sums up everything I dislike about his character, which, am I being biased with that? Maybe, I don't know. And I'd probably say the same criticism of No Pants Dance. This score, at its best, is really good. It's fun, it's boppy, but at its weakest, it's almost instantly forgettable. Altogether, on the whole, I lean towards more of a positive for this score. I think the fun moments make up for the weaker moments, but when it's all mixed in with this kind of weak book, I think it does highlight the songs that don't work a little bit more. And pacing-wise, it doesn't really do itself many favours. Now, in my personal opinion, I think a weak show can sometimes be saved by some fun staging and interesting design elements. The vice versa could be said. And I think the Turbine didn't do Eugenius any favours. This production scraps the old set, which is understandable. I don't think it would have worked in this space, but it's replaced with this comic book inspired backdrop and these kind of flimsy looking boxes. The illustrations look nice on the back wall when we're walking into the theatre and we have that main backsplash. I really like that as like a pre-show set, but when we actually see these incorporated in the show as the backdrops, it just looks tacky and cheap. And without anything else to really make the show stand out, it ultimately leaves with a very underwhelming stage design. But I will also say that this tends to be a trend with a lot of the sets at the Turbine. The only set that I've seen at the Turbine and really thought worked in that space was the set for No Limits. But when you compare what the set used to be to what the set is now, I think you can see a clear lack in what we've got now. Furthermore, I think this does affect the staging a bit. I think this musical is almost yelling out for more space as they try and do some fun dance numbers, but ultimately can't really do the expansive, big staging that this show needs because of how small the stage is. And because of how small the space is. I think the show would have really benefited from big, campy, over-the-top dance numbers. Little Kiss Ass has elements of this, like little bits and pieces that I think really do work, but just needed the bigger space. But a lot of the blocking of the show feels so simple, and there's nothing really in there that feels inventive or interesting. But when there's nothing visually for you to latch onto to really engage yourself with, it can end up highlighting weaker elements of the show, like in this show's case, the book. Now, I'd like to say this. I think this cast do their best with this material. There's a lot of good performances here, but I think the material does let the cast down a bit. I think the standout of the show is Joseph Beach. Joseph Beach gives everything he needs to as Lord Hector. He knows exactly what this character entails, and he hands it up to a million. And there are some nice performances in here. Some surprises, including Rhys Taylor, who plays a much smaller character, but in every moment they're on stage, they take that spotlight. They're a lot of fun, and I think they're very camp, which honestly immediately endears me to that character. I love someone who's a little bit fruity. Now come on now, I'm a bit fruity as well. But I think on the whole, a lot of this cast can't really do much with these characters. Elliot Evans and Jaina Brock Patel both give some really strong vocal performances. They really do sell these songs. But I think the script doesn't really help them to create some really engaging characters. Dom Anderson gets 3 different characters to play, and all 3 of them don't really get to show off how good of an actor he is. He's stuck doing a typical superhero that he doesn't really get to play very much, but when he does, he's a lot of fun in that role. A normal everyday dad who again doesn't really get much to do, and finally an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression that doesn't really leave him much space to experiment and to do his own thing. As I sit here reflecting on this show, I have to kind of wonder, is this really the same show that was going to transfer to the West End? It has a lot of fun elements, there's a lot of really fun ideas in here, but I think a lot of the show lets itself down. Its book is weak and has focus on the wrong places. Its pacing is really, really lackluster, and there were quite a few people who I saw that walked out at the end of Act 1. It definitely picked back up in Act 2, and I think a lot of that is down to it spending that time on Hector and on those fun elements of it. But when we're focused on Eugene and Janie and Ferris, and the actual getting the show to Hollywood section of the show, it's weak. It's really weak. And my question is, when you have such a fun and original idea within the story, why are we focusing on the stuff that feels overdone and very stereotypical? And I think this weak book just affects everything else. There's some really good songs in here, but when they're put into this book that's paced kind of weakly, the songs can't stand out very well. You've got a really strong cast full of talented performers, but you're not giving them the material to really show themselves off. There's so many places and so much fun ideas that you could have with a design for this show, but the space feels limited, it feels squashed in. And the illustrations, while fun and very comic book inspired, don't really help the show feel visually interesting. It is such a shame, because I can see exactly where in this show the gold is, and there is so much gold within this show, but it just feels like it's buried. It makes me wonder whether it was worth it to reassemble if they couldn't reassemble bigger and better. I hope this run can give Eugenius its drive back so it can go on and go to a bigger space and try itself out somewhere else. I really hope that they can work on this show a bit more, to tool things around, to maybe put some more focus in the areas where this show feels like it needs it. But just like Tough Man, I have to be tough, but fair. And I think it's fair to say that Eugenius misses the mark in a lot of places where it could really shine. But what do you think? Have you seen Eugenius at the other palace or here at the Turbine? What are your thoughts on the show? Obviously, there were a lot of people around me who were really enjoying the show, and I'd love to hear from you guys and what you really found fun and enjoyed about the show. As we all know, theatre is what? Subjective! So if you enjoy something that I dislike, that's okay, and let me know why. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribing. It really helps me and it helps out the channel. There's some links to my videos on stream right now and a link to my Instagram so you can drop me a follow over there. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!